Well, hi Thomas, how are you doing again?
Howdy, Neil. Good to talk. Haven't talked in a while. I'm very excited about our upcoming plans. That's how I feel.
Yeah, so do I. Right, really, yeah, really, very much so. Because we've got it's our theme is Atlantis, an empire lost and found. And first of all, we have the book. This is the only one on the planet at the moment, the proof book, and it's looking really good. And you're pretty much finished with the film, I think, aren't you?
The film, in terms of production, post audio, it's still, the audio won't be done for another month or so, but the film is 99% done. There'll just be a little bit more that you and I will do when you come to Ireland next week. Just a few more little tidy up things. But yeah, it's in terms of the actual production of the rushes are 95%, 97% done. And yeah, so everything's is running on smooth and on schedule.
Well, I saw the first half an hour of it, and it is superb. I mean, I'm really proud of it. You've done an amazing job.
And that's before I put the cinematic processing in, so the final one will look even better. It'll look like a movie.
It's really good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what we're going to... Sorry, go on.
I said I'm delighted with it.
Yeah. So we're going to premiere the film at the Mysterious Earth conference, which is over in Preston, and that's on the Saturday the 10th and Sunday the 11th of September, the Mysterious Earth conference. And we're going to start. I've just got a brand new 2.5 meter screen, which is underneath my feet at the moment because it's so big. You know, to get it in my living room. So that is going to look fantastic. So we're going to start the conference with the film, and
that's it'll be like a cinema because that hall doesn't have many windows. It's nice and dark when the lights are off.
It will be. It'll be dark, a brilliant projector. It's going to look fantastic because it's not just me and you talking. It's the animations.
We're putting on a show.
Yeah, I really think it's going to be fantastic. So that's going to be the first thing, and then I've put us down for a discussion after that. So that'll be the first. That'll take us up to lunch. So it'll be the film, and then me and you'll just answer questions or discuss the film with the audience. So please do book your tickets early because they are going. There are a lot of people have booked already, and you can book it from the webpage at megalithictours.com. The button on the bottom of the conference page there. So that's. So how did it all start? Let's think about this. Why did we do this?
About 2 years ago, you contacted me. You'd come across my work somehow, and you said that you'd like to just work together, and you casually mentioned when we were somewhere in, I think in England or Ireland when we first met up, you had said, I'd love to make a film about Atlantis. And it's funny you said that because that's been in the back of my mind ever since I wrote the book, The Druid Code. And then that's how it started.
It was, wasn't it? And remember, like we went to the Lake District and we started talking about our feelings about the sites, how they happened, where they came from, and why they're there. And we agreed on so much, and we kind of independently thought the same things. So that sort of added to eventually, and then the thing about the processional ways, which is my little baby, and eventually just saying we kind of had the contents of a book there and waiting, didn't we?
Yeah, I was at first. I was, I know the processional ways are all a big deal in the megalithic world, but when you'd first mentioned that could be tied to some Atlantean consciousness, I started to really get thinking deep into that then. And it started to make a lot of sense to me because those processional ways don't really exist in any other form of megalith or anything else. They're not, you don't see them anywhere except on these islands, really, and maybe in Karnak, but you don't see them really anywhere else. And they're always on the margins, on the fringes. And they're such an integral part of the megalith, as are the enclosures. You see, you're right. When you said to me that time, the megaliths in Britain and Ireland, although they're part of the European megalithic arc, they're a whole other thing all by themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what really started me going, because then I said, well, that's a whole other culture.
Yeah, absolutely. But I remember so many years just going, I mean, I've been done really constantly traveling around ancient sites for 20 years now. And you start building up an idea. And so in Europe, okay, that's a whole, they've all got their own types of megaliths and different formations and towers and towers and all this sort of thing. But it's only here that they have, that I saw that they have these processional ways. And it's as if I thought, well, this has to be like the center of pilgrimage. Otherwise, why would you have them? And then it all sort of clicks together. If it's a pilgrimage, what makes it an attraction? What makes it so like the islands a spiritual destination in themselves?
And the complexity of them, the further you go west and north, the complexity of the Ness of Brognar, and the sheer infrastructure that's there, and what's there left there now is a lot less than what used to be there. The footprint of many other megaliths are still under the ground, shown up by the geophys. Sligo here, on the very fringes of Ireland, they're still finding megaliths in the town to this day. And they're just, why is the complexity of the megalithic culture so complex on the sea, just like in Cumbria, on the sea, near the sea, not far from it? And it's because it was a maritime megalithic culture, or the traces or footprints of one.
Absolutely, and that goes down because when you first look at it, you think, well, that's great, but they do have them in Carnac, which is but then when you look at the timings and I mean, Carnac was part of these islands then, so at the times we're talking, which I do believe are earlier than kind of usually orthodox archaeology would say it is. So you've got processional ways and pilgrimage ways right down through Brittany. I mean, what else can those lines be? Those huge lines of megaliths, if they're not for walking down.
And we discovered so many smoking guns that added to the story, and that was one of them. But there was others too, like the mythology of the two of the Dan, and then leading that to the European mysteries, which is a big part of the second part of the film, which is mostly your gig. But we were able to glue the very ancient past into the European mystery tradition. That was a smoking gun that came out very powerfully. Things like the technology, the stone spears in Scotland, and the knout mace head in Ireland. These things that even here we found quotes by Irish academics saying that this 5,500-year-old thing could only have been created with a high pressure Dremel type tool. It could not have been done by hand. And there's a previous high technology culture that brought these things to these islands or was part of it.
So we've been saying for so long, and I've been saying to people so long, there used to be a pre-advanced civilization that had their own physics, which we have totally forgotten, and their way of engineering. And this kind of answers all these questions. It's funny, isn't it? As you start with a thesis or an idea, and you start looking into it, your mind attracts different parts of it, and it begins to create a whole.
A cohesion comes in.
Yeah.
Like, I was actually very surprised. I thought we struggled. I know, just like yourself, me and my background, knew somehow that the megaliths on these islands were connected to this Atlantis story. Whatever this Atlantis story was, there was a connection there.
It always seemed that way.
The folklore alone put that. A big one for me was when you took me to see the Dakar Bears. I was like, okay, these things are from a different continent, and I've got quite a good knowledge in art and art history, and I was like, this is not from here. This is from a different consciousness that's not apparent anywhere else in megalithic Europe.
You know, I love taking people to the Dakar Bears because I love that. Then you start looking at it, and it's this, and then well, wait a minute, what about that? Well, what's this? I never seen anything like that before. And you go around the four of them, and the people are absolutely mind blown by them.
Yeah.
Because they're just something totally different, aren't they?
They could have been made on a different planet.
They
The
could
style
have,
of
yeah,
art.
yeah.
And that was another thing too that I want, and I hope it will not debunk but change people's consciousness in the film, because the story of Atlantis was told to us from Plato's classical Greek time. People have a tendency to overlay an ancient Greek aesthetic upon Atlantis, that it would look like Athens, ancient Athens, or it looked like, you know, ancient Sparta or Delphi. It really didn't, because that's only a kind of a prejudice put into our heads by popular culture. In reality, it was much older than Nandam, and it would have had its own style, its own aesthetic. And that's what we see in these buildings we see around the world from these periods.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. You say, why did they do it? How did they do it? It kind of explains it, doesn't it? It's because to them, that was probably what they did, you know. And it's, sorry, carry on.
And the residual cultural legacy is left over. Like, for instance, the Round Towers of Ireland. There's nothing like them anywhere else in the world.
No.
And why is there 100 of them just in Ireland? And when they were built, they would have been the skyscrapers of the time. There wouldn't have been a building on Earth that had been as tall as they were. And you're like, why? What the hell? You know, that kind of thing. And it's like, that had to have come from somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's good in a way that the things that I've found really interesting over the years, and the things that you have, like the Round Towers, has really been a big thing for you. We've managed to meld the whole thing together to create sort of that whole. And we've actually also managed to look back so far into the past, go through the time of Atlantis, bring it more up to date with our megaliths, and we've managed to match that up through the Western mysteries to what's happening today. And it's amazing how it just creates, you know, an absolute timeline.
Yeah, well, that was very exciting for me when I was reading how you had tied because I got the Western mystery tradition into it, because I've often, what is ground one? What is ground one of, this is ground zero of the Western mystery traditions? Is it Egypt? You know, we tend to sell ourselves short because we always thought it's the Middle East, it's Egypt. It came to us from the East. Well, I mean, I always suspected that was completely wrong, because the development of megaliths is from the West to the East. So it's the opposite of what we've been told. And that tied it all in together for me perfectly, especially when later on, reading about the roots of Freemasonry by Thomas Paine and stuff like that, where he said it came from ancient Europe. And suddenly it changed the narrative of, it's not all Egyptian, it's not all Semitic, it's not all Babylonian. There's a big story on this side that has been, I believe, deliberately played down so it's in the hands of certain initiates.
Yeah, and it's a way of saying, it's a bit like saying, oh, we don't know how did it must be aliens.
Yeah.
It's well, how did we get this? Oh, it's from Egypt. It's kind of, and that's not really an answer, is it? You know, it's and if you, because the very fact that we're in this part of the world, we've been trying to, different organizing, we're trying to pull the different bits together and find the different pieces of the jigsaw, and they're trying to rebuild this whole thing. And it's us that's doing that. You know, it's not happening in Egypt at all, really.
Yeah. And Solon was completely, you know, it's distinct. He said this was before Egypt. This was very old civilization that inspired these ones. And there were bits of it came to it. And there may be even bigger parts. This story is so gigantic. There's a whole, you know, you can bring Africa into it eventually to the Dogon and stuff like that. The American, we only scratched the surface on these kinds of other peripheral things like the American stuff. But this, you know, I've no doubt now, you know, for a long time, I used to believe, I couldn't decide whether Atlantis was a real thing or an allegory. But now I firmly believe that there was absolutely 100% a continent, an empire, a maritime power force civilization prior to what we think is Western civilization that existed in the Central Atlantic, just precisely where Plato was very specific about its location.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, people look for You look for Atlantis all over the world. Plato actually said where it was, and he said where it wasn't. So I don't know why people shoot off all around the world trying to find it. I mean, it was in the Atlantic. Atlantis was in the Atlantic.
And even Ignatius Donnelly 150 years ago said it had to be in the Atlantic because it's the only thing that explains the megalithic culture of Europe and directly across the megalithic culture of Central America. You know, they don't appear. The megalithic culture of Western Europe, of North America, doesn't appear in Canada. It appears exactly where Atlantis would have ended, on the other side.
Yeah, and in Timaeus and Critias, he actually said that it wasn't in the Mediterranean. It was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, or Heracles, as you called it. So he said it wasn't in the Mediterranean. I mean, how's that? Does that mean he was in the Mediterranean? It doesn't make any sense, does it? So.
And it even said that the entrance was a port leading into, that was the entrance to the great continent. They were very specific, and you hear people telling us it's a volcano in Africa and stuff like this. They were extremely specific, and where it was located in the Atlantic, it would have touched on all these megalithic cultures around Western Europe, the megalithic arc, and also on things like the Bimini Road in the Bahamas and so on. It's not that difficult to find Atlantis. Its peripherals are perfectly marked.
It's weird. It's weird, isn't it, how people go off on a tangent? In fact, and then he said this. They say it was just a story, analogy, but he actually says this is not a story. This is the truth. Don't think it's a story.
Yep. And then you add all the so-called mythology. We know, like we've been told from everyone from Joseph Campbell to J.R. Tolkien, that mythology is real. It's just a different way of telling a story. But Irish mythology is full of the two of the Danann and these people, the High Brasil, and Tir na Og. You have the Tolkien talking about these these kingly races that came to North Britain that are part of the folklore, and they came across the sea with new methods of agriculture. There's just too much of this stuff to say, if there was just the Atlantis story, you'd say, okay, maybe that. But it's corroborated by endless folklore in Northern Europe.
And the mysteries as well. Because a lot of the Grail myths are like a fundamental part of the early mystery stories. And then when you came up with the 4 treasures, that just wow, a connection. We were looking to say, is there a connection? And when you came up with those, I thought, oh, that was it. Yeah, it was like lights all lit up.
4 treasures brought from beyond the seas that became the 4 treasures of Ireland. That became the 4 Grail mystery treasures of Geoffrey of Monmouth.
And even look like the 4 suits in the tarot.
Yeah, and other things too, like it gestated from the Grail. The Grail mysteries are really, I think, the genesis of the modern Western mystery tradition, because it all seems to have come out of that whole the Grail mysteries, and that was like the base, because they were so popular in not just Britain but also in France and places like that. So that was kind of ground zero. But when you trace that back, here's Geoffrey of Monmouth writing about the ancient treasures of Ireland. And he also dropped another few truth bombs along the way. He spoke about how Stonehenge was actually in Ireland and floated across by Maryland. Now, that's definitely an allegory, but he's showing that the ancient stones,
the connection
from the West, it's always going to the West,
Didn't he say that when he brought the four treasures were brought over, didn't he say that they came from a sunken land, or land that was or a flooded land? It's like, I mean, it's there, isn't it?
And they came on a storm, yeah. And they came just like the North British stories with new methods of agriculture and this kind of thing. And they were seen as a kind of a almost supernatural beings because they had high technology that the natives that they introduced the natives to.
Yeah, and so it all ties up. And then when you're looking across to the Grail myths, A lot of them came out of the court of Champagne, where also the Knights Templars did. So then you've got this idea of the high society. There are people that believe themselves to be of a kingly race.
Yeah.
So where did this kingly race come from?
Well, if you even look at the kind of heritage of the British kings, the English kings, well, the Brittonic kings and the Welsh kings, and then you have Tara in Ireland, it's a very different kind of royalty than the royalty of, say, Europe, of like Lorraine and those other places. They almost have like this supernaturalism about them. When you read about King Penda, when you read about the Grail, the Arthurian legends, when the real stories of Tara, they're not even legends, they're actual facts. They're so, and then the history of the Welsh kings, there's something they're almost spoken about as a different beings that arrived among us. Do you ever get that? I've always got that impression.
Yeah, and I tell you, on a sort of more spiritual, when you go to Tara, which I did last week, just you can feel it. You just the whole thing just has a different feel to. There's a different feel to the megaliths, but it's a very spiritual place, and the memories of what's happened there, it sort of reeks of it. And we're going again there next week in 2 weeks, aren't we? But yeah, you can feel it. It's different.
That's the classic Atlantean landscape. You have the henges, the circle with the road into the middle of it. Just like, this is another thing we brought to this documentary, was the concept of the circular enclosure. Okay, we're told by Plato was a concentric circles with a road through the middle made from canals. That symbol is everywhere in megalithic, even on Long Meg, everywhere on megaliths all over Europe and all over esoteric and occultic buildings. You don't have to look even far to find it. It'll be 20 miles from where you live, no matter where you are in these islands. You will find an ancient stone in that shape.
I'm just trying to find one now because we've got a picture in the book of one of them, and it's.
There's the famous one in Roscommon, and you swear it was Atlantis. All it's missing is the water. There's loads of these multi-ring enclosures.
I can't find it, but it's when we looked at it, we just sort of said, well, that picture is like a diagram of Atlantis carved into the rock. So
like their sigil or their trademark, and then that appears on the landscape in concentric circles of megaliths. I mean, there it is. All that's missing is the water, and then you have huge concentric ringed enclosures in the west of Ireland, like in Roscommon, in Castlereagh, not far from here. And that thing is, all it's missing is the water, and you have Atlantis.
Yeah.
You have it. Yeah.
It's like the cup and ring marks, isn't it? It's like everybody says, well, what are they? Nobody ever knows. But
it's almost like their trademark or their insignia.
Yeah, as if say this is or a flag even. It's like this represents our homeland.
And how it was organized,
Yeah. So everything we've kind of done, we all had these ideas floating around in our head, and it's great to be able to put it all into one place and to have a sequence of how we think it's all worked out. So,
and that's the thing. I think you and I with this project are really planting a seed that we hope people will take and run with it, because there's a huge amount still to be uncovered in this story. We've only just opened Pandora's box a little bit.
Yeah, we're not saying that this is the answer. We're not saying anything. We're just throwing it forward to you guys, really, to say, well, this is what we think. We've been doing it quite a lot of years, and this is what we've come up with. And hopefully it'll help the whole process of events to take it. And we've done what you usually do, Thomas. We've gone off to left field. And we haven't really stopped listening to what anybody tells us. Let's decide for ourselves what we think. And it's taken us down an avenue. So
a blank canvas is a beautiful way to control your own prejudice and the overall narratives of ancient sites, because at the end of the day, the experts don't know any more than us amateurs.
Give the heck, no.
They don't. They just have their own story. They have an agreed upon consensus. But the
and they
reality
teach it
is,
to the next person and the next person and the
yeah,
next person.
if you were to, if aliens were to land from another planet and look at our megaliths, they would develop their own story about them. They're blank canvases.
They are. So that's our book. It'll be available at the conference. We're going to launch it then, about the book launch, and we'll show the film. And then you're going to do another talk as well, aren't you, about the sites of Sligo and tying the folklore and archaeology, how the two fit in.
I'll be doing all that, yeah.
To have a quick flash through the other people. Peter Harris, he's gone out and done the measuring thing again. A bit like Alexandra Tom measured all the sites, and he's found a unit of measurement that he wants to present to us, and this will be interesting, because there's a lot of work's gone into that. John Trippier, a good friend of mine, he's an archaeologist in Preston, in Lancashire. He works mainly for Lancashire County Council. I like archaeologists because they dig everything up for us. They clean it off with toothbrushes, and then we can go and have a look at them and explain to them what they are. Anyway, John, he's talking Heaven or Valhalla, Viking sculptured crosses and stones of the Northwest. So he's an expert on sculptured crosses, and we all love those, don't we? Peter Yanaski, who you know, don't you? The artist. Peter Yanowski.
Yeah, Kowski, yes. Recently just became a great grandfather, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good on him. Yeah. That's one of his, he's an artist. That's one of his works.
Yep. And a very interesting man too. I've been friends with Peter for about 10 years.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. He's written a book, Ancestors Awakening. So that's going to be great. He used to be a teacher years and years and years ago, so he'll be good at getting it across. Kathy Rowan Jewett, a friend I've known for many years. Kevin's ex-wife, actually, Kevin Rowan Jewett, is a mutual friend, and she just passed her art degree as well. She got first spot, and she's going to do the mysterious Paleolithic figure, the Venus of Hohefels. I've never even heard of that, but have you heard of it?
The German Venus figures, very interesting stuff. That.
And one more is Catherine Monks, who comes on, been on quite a few tours. Pathways, Spirits and Stones. So that's the 2 days. Meal in the evening, if you want to.
Vikings, Atlantis, Sligo, folklore, art, ancient symbolism. You got it all, don't you?
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. If anybody wants any of these sheets, just give me a shout and I'll put them in the post to you. Email me. But like I say, come on the website, book yourself a place, and it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to the film. It's going to be spectacular.
Oh yeah, it will be. I mean, you haven't even seen what I have lined up. You haven't even seen your main.
Well, the first was amazing to start with.
And we spent a lot of money on helicopter shots and stuff like that from stock footage places. So that gives it pushes it to the next level,
Yeah, we were lucky enough to go around doing some filming as well, weren't we? And that was good fun, really. It's an excuse to enjoy yourself, isn't it? So.
Yeah, it's also I never really filmed the megaliths like that before, so it was a good experience for me too as well.
Yeah, a good few weekends away. Went up to Orkney and down to Glastonbury and Avebury and various places. So it's all been good. Yep. And it all comes together at the conference on the 10th and 11th of September. So, anything else to add?
I'm looking forward to seeing everybody again. Don't forget Jason and Timmy will also be there. They booked their tickets.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I mean, I really do sincerely hope that this opens a whole new dialogue on the Atlantis thing, that everyone can throw their own soup flavor into the soup pot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping this does set a different direction of thought, because I think it's needed. And the good thing is that to tie the things together, that seem to be all involved in this plot, which have never been really included before.
Yeah.
And how it fits again is fantastic. So yeah, I really hope that it starts a new chain of thought.
And also, people of this part of the world will have a lineage now back to Atlantis. They won't think it's an ancient Greek thing anymore. They'll think, wow, Atlantis is my ancestors. And that's an important part of why I'm involved.
Absolutely, yeah. The whole thing brings it all home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. We don't have to look to the other side of the world. And
yeah, go west, young man, as they say.
That's what they said, didn't they? Yeah. Right. So hopefully see you all at the Mysterious Earth Conference, 10th and 11th of September. Thanks a lot, Thomas. I'll see you all then.
Okay, see you, Neil, and see you, everybody else.
Right.